Hello, Vermont. I'm Andy Julo.
And I'm Joanna Grossman.
And this is There's No A in Creemee.
Vermont politics, culture, and beyond.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey, folks, and welcome back to There's No A in Creemee. We are super excited that later on this episode, we're going to be interviewing Secretary of State Sarah Copeland Hanzas. We're really happy with how that turned out and to share all this great stuff with you about what she's up to.
Episode 7.
Episode 7.
Yep. I chime in. That's my role.
No.
Is to increment the episode numbers and chime in. And I did this on the last episode, and I said it's episode 6.
Right.
And you responded with, and this was perfect for our Are You a Real Vermonter episode. You said, I quote, yep. And that is a Vermont answer.
Really?
So, yeah, well done.
Do you think that's a Vermont answer?
Yep. Have you ever seen that movie Baby Boom with Diane Keaton?
No.
She goes from New York City to Vermont.
No way.
Yeah. So she's dealing with that culture shock, but she's got this handyman.
Oh my God. There's a movie about my life?
I think so. Well, she goes with a baby.
Oh.
I don't know. That's entirely.
Yeah, that's a different story. I had mine here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the handyman always just says yep or nope. That's the only thing he ever says.
I mean, I get the angle there in that Vermonters tend to not say a lot.
Right.
Especially in comparison to New Yorkers. And I feel like I have acquired inadvertently the skill of chatting because I've had to fill a lot of space.
This podcast would not work well if we were both like me.
Yeah, no, or like me.
A lot of dead silence.
Yeah.
We'd probably each be reading a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've got the vibe. It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good interview. Sarah
Yeah.
Copeland Hanzas.
Yeah.
We had the elections bill was just passed.
Yep.
She talked about what was in it and what was taken out from the original version. We talked about what the Secretary of State's office does, which is pretty vast. There's lots of different responsibilities, some special initiatives that she's doing. And you'd asked Charity Clark about the SAVE Act.
Yeah.
And some of the challenges over voting that are happening currently. And
all
you
the
followed
threats.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were able to have that conversation with Secretary of State's office as well, which is great.
That was really cool. I mean, I appreciate them both so much for indulging me in that conversation because it's so important to me and to all of us.
It really is. And of course, we got her Creemee order.
Yeah.
And got to talk a little bit about what it means to be a real Vermonter, which was a really fun topic that we talked about on episode 6.
So there's a lot going on. We just had our, end of the session. It was originally, I think the 16th was originally scheduled to be the veto session.
Yeah.
And then it became the day where they packed in everything they hadn't dealt with. I don't know if there's precedent for doing it that way, actually.
Yeah, I don't either. No, the election bill went through, but the big one that everyone was covering was the education bill.
Yep.
And it was a bit of a drama show that we saw.
Oh my gosh, it was so intense. It's wild because there's always a lot of conflict over issues. Like that's a really common thing to have happen anywhere, and certainly in Vermont where people have a lot of like passions and feelings. I will say it was different this year for me being county chair of the party and really having a lot of community leaders and Democratic leaders and even legislators themselves come to me and talk about how frustrated they were. That was a lot.
Yeah. And, my background is school board, and they were almost universally against this and really kind of powerless to stop it. But we have really a radical transformation in our education system coming very soon. These various committees, and a lot of it's going to be determined by different groups that have been set up to carry forward different pieces of it. But they're going to start meeting this summer, and things are going to happen fast. We're going to have a district task force of 11 members, 6 legislators, 5 non-legislators, who are going to start meeting no later than August 1st, and they are going to be recommending districts no later than December 1st. So we're going to have new school districts. They are going to be 4,000 to 8,000 students in size.
Wow.
There is only one district that currently meets that. That's CVU. So maybe that's one district that stays, but everybody else, including Burlington, is not big enough under these current standards, and it's going to need to be merged. with another district.
It's pretty wild. I mean, not only is the policy a major shift, but I mean, a lot of people have been talking to us about how it all went down, and that really was different. And for those of you who haven't read Senator Hardy's piece on her website, she kind of goes into some detail about that and about how it went through and how some procedures were changed and it was a voice vote, and how the conference committee, didn't align with the caucuses, and that was just really...
It was a challenge on both floors to the committee report, alleging that the conference committee went beyond their scope. They took things or added things that were not part of the House or Senate bill, and both those were sustained on the floor by John Rogers in the Senate and Jill Krowinski in the House, but then overturned by the body.
Yeah, that was what I was saying to you earlier, is that when, I understood the Senate bill where it was before it went to conference committee, and then, I was aware of it changing because of it was changing and people were talking about it, and that didn't feel right to me, but I didn't know that was actually a violation of procedure until I read about it in Ruth's piece. And then, to learn that it had actually been, overruled, and it had there were challenges to that in both chambers, and then they were overruled. And that, to me, I'm curious if there's any precedent for that. And that seemed like, I mean, I can understand why people in the caucus are upset about that. That's just a really difficult situation.
Yeah. And then the House vote happened so fast that it looks like many members weren't ready. I was listening to it. It was so confusing. And it went down in a voice vote, which is so rare for a bill of this size.
Yeah.
And several members stood up and said, we weren't ready for the question, and it was done.
Yeah.
And then they ended up having a really long conversation with lots of speeches and a roll call vote over whether to send it to the governor's desk, which was, this is never a question. They were going to send it to the governor after they had passed it. But that became symbolic of the vote that would have happened had they actually had a roll call on the original vote, which is so strange.
It's so strange. Like, I had a couple legislators sort of scrambling to let me know that even though they voted yes to send it to the governor, that they had voted no on the bill because it was by voice vote. Yeah. So there was no record, and they were feeling very defensive about that. And so it's super murky, and I felt like there was very little transparency. And I mean, people are feeling like, democracy was tested a little here, and they aren't necessarily happy with how that broke out. A lot of people in my district anyway.
Yeah. And we're going to have some guests on our next episode.
Yes, we're going to have Senator Martine Gulick and Representative Aaron Brady, who are both, in addition to being legislators, they're on their school boards as well. So they're really experts in the area.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah. We are going to have wards I remember we talked about wards in episode 1, and I was like, what is this thing? And is it an urban thing? And part of this bill is that once we have our districts set up, there's another committee that comes in and establishes wards within each one of the new school districts. So
oh, wow.
All of Vermont is going to be part of a ward. Yeah.
Oh my God. So you're finally going to have a ward,
and
Andy.
The only thing you'll vote on is your school board member for your ward, which definitely will not align with your town, unless you're a really large town. You're going to have one. It's going to be like a state representative. You won't vote on your school budgets, which is, we heard a lot during the campaign of greater connectivity of your vote to your tax rate, and you get no vote.
Yeah.
The only thing you can vote on is you can boost your spending by up to 5% under certain circumstances. So the district can vote to spend more by 5%. There was some conversation about being able to spend less.
Right.
That got scrapped, and we ended up with more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how this thing shakes out.
It is. I don't know that people fully understand how different this is going to be. And maybe they do. I guess we'll see.
I don't think there's a chance that the electorate truly understands what's happened.
It really does change income sensitivity pretty significantly. It's going to change class sizes and have some requirements around that. So it's going to be really, really different. There are some allowances for small schools and some small school grants that is set in part by the state board, also by the sparsity and the density of your town. You might get a little extra per pupil spending if your town is below 55 people per square mile. There's going to be some state grants for school construction. There's going to be kind of a lead-in period where your tax rate, a lot of people's tax rates are going to go up or down to get to the middle, and there's going to be a transition period over 3 years where you step up or step down. I think we're actually going to see a lot of step-ups in more conservative-leaning districts and step-downs in more left-leaning districts, which is going to be very interesting.
I mean, so that's not really going to save on people's taxes.
I think they're hoping to find administrative efficiencies in collapsing these districts. That's the hope.
Yeah.
Healthcare isn't going down.
That's for sure.
The need for social services is not going away.
Yeah.
They are adding a new tier for taxes, which allows them to separately tax non-residential residential homes, which sounds oxymoronic. Essentially, those are second homes, which is something they've been after for a while.
Yeah. So one of the other big things that happened, not right on the 16th, but before that, but not long before that, was that H-91 was vetoed.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for a lot of legislators. It was supposed to be sort of a replacement policy for the unhoused communities motel voucher program, and it was vetoed. And actually not long after, another set of the vouchers were cut, or they were not renewed, I guess, is what actually happened. And I know that a lot of people in Chittenden County were really disappointed about that.
Yeah, we really need a replacement for that program, and this was it, and now we're looking at another year before we can really come up with something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can say living and working in Burlington, we really need a solution. Like It is really in our faces all the time. And it's frustrating that it hasn't been a priority for the governor. This would have been a really nice, really exit ramp, like a different way to handle this, a more sustainable long-term way. It didn't even cost that much.
And it turned over a lot of it to nonprofit groups that specialize in this as well. And it was getting the state out of actually administering these programs.
Yeah, that would have been ideal. Yep, so they're going to have to probably take another whack at that next year. And it's just going to be a rinse and repeat situation for a while.
It'll be an interesting session between that. All these details they've got to work out with the education. I mean, they're going to sit down next session with these district maps for the schools, and the reality, once you put it on a map, the reality is going to hit. And there's going to be a lot to think about, a lot to consider.
Was the timeline for the new maps, is that in the off season? So are we going to start to see that in the spring session?
Well, it's due December 1st.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be done before they sit down in the next session.
Wow.
They'll have no more than 3 different plans. So they could do up to 3 different contingencies.
Okay.
With districts. They could say, okay, we're going to make them all small, 4,000, smallish, right?
All right?
Or they could go with larger ones, or they could go with something in between, something that makes sense.
Oh my gosh. So they're also going to be all running for re-election when that map is coming
Yes.
out.
Well, and that was pointed out in one of these editorials of like, this is going to be an election year as we consider how we divvy up everybody's schools, and Vermonters love their schools and love their school districts.
Yeah.
And every single one of them is going away except for maybe CVU, but that's not even determined.
Yeah.
Right as people go to vote.
That is going to be an extraordinary election season for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they dumped the reserves this year, so that's going to catch up next year.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. I'm really interested to see how that goes, and we'll certainly track it in the off season as information comes out from the study groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Elsewhere in life, we're allowed to talk about the Mets again. You told me we couldn't talk about the Mets while they were losing.
I was just so frustrated.
That was an ugly losing streak.
So ugly.
Yeah.
I think because we were riding so high for a while, too, it was like a really steep cliff to fall off.
It was.
And, I mean, we've been through enough,
I think so. Yes, we have definitely suffered. They won last night.
Yeah.
You kind of ruined it for me with that text.
About the Philly Fanatic.
About the Philly Fanatic.
He's so cute.
Well, first you hinted last night that you might prefer the Philly Fanatic to Mr. Matt, and then you confirmed it this morning. I thought, well, she's just delirious or tired or drunk or something.
Working a little bit.
Yeah. And Mr. Matt is is far superior than the Philly Phantic.
He's not.
I don't think you can't say that.
He's so weird, Andy.
Have you ever seen Tommy Lasorda when he went after the Philly Fanatic?
Oh, that rings a bell. But it must have been so long ago.
Definitely watch it on YouTube. The Philly Fanatic was carrying around this dummy with this pot belly that was supposed to be Tommy Lasorda.
And that's not nice.
Yeah, so he went running out and he grabbed the dummy. He pushed the Philly Fanatic to the ground, and then he beat him with the dummy.
Oh my God.
He was mad.
That is so violent.
It was really violent. Tommy Lasorda was, he's like an old school manager. They used to get really upset. And then the following year, he had Youppi thrown out of a game in Montreal.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Youppi's pretty innocuous.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, obviously, the Philly Fanatic was trolling him, and that's not right. And even though I love the Philly Fanatic, I don't condone that
he's
behavior.
He's an instigator. He's a brat. Mr. Met doesn't do that.
Oh, so this is not about aesthetics. This is totally about behavior.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's possible that you have been observing each of their behaviors more closely than I have, because I just think the Philly Fanatic is really cute.
Okay.
I enjoy his presence.
These are our baseball discussions.
What's
cuter?
True.
What player is cute? Like we have this thread, and like Steve and I sometimes get like real baseball and real play, and then before you and Corinne turn it to uniform
styling.
Styles. Yeah, the Nationals turned to triple play.
Yeah,
and Steve and I got like one back and forth on that before you turned it into a discussion on the font.
You guys are allowed to continue talking. We didn't stop you.
I guess we should have taken it offline.
No, I mean you could have just continued, but no, I mean I do think I am a little hung up on the aesthetics of baseball.
Were you watching Friday when the Phillies had the City Connect uniforms on?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were weird.
I was waiting for a text on that.
Yeah.
With a
I
review.
think that speaks to the level of exhaustion that I've been facing. That I definitely it occurred to me, and I was like, that's like so much work to get my phone out right now.
There must be something wrong with Joanna.
Oh no. That's my tell.
Right.
Yeah, no, those were weird for sure. Yeah. Some of the City Connect uniform, it seems like all the teams are wearing a different uniform every day right now.
Yeah.
And
that's marketing.
It's just marketing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was with my in-laws, they were all wearing the City Connect Mets black and purple uniforms.
Oh, they like those?
Oh, I do too.
You do like those?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they've got the Queensboro Bridge on them.
I mean, yeah.
That's like, I biked over that bridge like probably 1,000 times.
I'm a traditionalist. I like the pinstripes and then the road grays.
Yeah, Steve
and like
too.
The Cardinals, you were making fun of the Cardinals uniforms because they're City Connects because they had funny font.
Oh, yeah.
Too. Yeah, but they're not into it. Like the Cardinals and the Cubs and the Yankees, like they've got perfect uniforms.
Yeah.
And then the Major League Baseball comes along and tells them they've got to come up with some goofy combination, and they clearly are not into it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah. What I really can't stand is that the Nationals, like their alternate like branding scheme looks exactly like Walgreens.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes me crazy.
Yes.
I've been clear about that.
You have been very clear.
Yeah. But now our listeners know my feelings about that as well.
There you go.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Okay, we have an agenda, right? We have an interview with Secretary of State Sarah Copeland Hanzas. Here it is, and we hope that you enjoy it. Well, Secretary of State Sarah Copeland Hanzas, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You and I met way back in 2016 when I was a youngin' and thought that running for public office would be a good idea. And we would have a weekly candidate call, and you would lead that. And that was so helpful as a young candidate, not knowing what I was doing, having someone like you who was a veteran in the House. You'd probably been in the House for a decade or more at that time.
I had been, yeah.
Yeah. That was great to have that help. I think, it's something I think is really helpful for all candidates, all parties. Just makes a better democracy if we have better candidates out there representing themselves to the voters as best as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, running for election is a hard thing to do, but if you have ideas about how you think you can represent your community and what you think your community needs to have voiced in Montpelier, it's the best way to make that happen.
You've done a lot to raise the profile of the Secretary of State's office, but I think it's maybe not something that people don't quite understand, or if they do, they understand their piece of it, the business piece or the election piece. Talk a little bit about what all the functions that the Secretary of State's office serves.
They're so broad.
And it is. It's broad and it feels very diverse, but the wonderful thing that we have come to realize as an agency of 83 individuals across 4 divisions and 3 special programs is that the common tie that binds us all is that we want to help Vermonters figure out how to navigate this thing that is state government. Our 4 main divisions are the State Archives and Records Administration. That is the repository that keeps all of the records and archives of the state of Vermont. So they're a tremendous resource. It's like having superpowered librarians who just know everything about the state of Vermont, past and present.
I love that characterization. Superpowered librarians for the government.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah. Our largest division is the Office of Professional Regulation. So we regulate 50-something different professions. Over 80,000 Vermonters come to us for their certificate or their license to allow them to do their profession. The purpose of that is to protect the public by making sure that the people who are practicing in these professions are suitably trained and that they are maintaining their own standards. And we have a team of investigators who are licensed law enforcement who will take a very careful look if they find that somebody may have conducted themselves poorly or been unprofessional. They will refer that for prosecution. So we also register businesses. So every single business and nonprofit entity in the state comes through us for their registration. That is, again, a matter of public protection, of transparency for people, so that if you were wronged by a business or you felt like you were cheated out of something, you have a repository to go to find out who owns this business, where is it located, how do I, possibly bring legal action. And then our 4th main division is the elections division. The big one.
They're all big, but yeah.
Yeah, big in a different way. Gets sort of foundational to our democracy and how we govern ourselves in a democracy, and also subject to a lot of scrutiny from a lot of different places, particularly in more recent years, in the past decade or so, when so many allegations are flying about election fraud and people who aren't eligible casting ballots. And so it's, that division more than any other really has sort of a zero margin of error, right? We have to get it right.
That's a lot and amazing.
So that's our main divisions. I have some special programs that I like to talk about as well, and I can run through those quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the longstanding programs that we have are the temporary officiant program. If you want to get married in Vermont and you don't have a clergy or pastor who you want to marry you, maybe you want your cousin or your uncle or your grandmother to perform the wedding ceremony. They just need to have a temporary officiant's license. So you come through our website to get that. It's a great program and a really feel-good program.
Yeah.
The other longstanding program is our Safe at Home program, and that is an address confidentiality program that offers a mail forwarding service, so that when you're filling out forms, government forms where you have to list your physical address, you're listing your physical address here. And when you need a mailing address, you use our PO box, and then we repackage and forward your mail to you. So we are the only state entity who knows where your physical address is. And my last special program that I'm so excited about is one that's new to the office since I came in, and that is our education and civic engagement program. We have a new...
You're probably going there. I see you launched an off-cycle election.
Yes, we did. We have an off-cycle election, and I'm really excited to talk about the launch of the Kid Governor program. This is a curriculum that is, well produced and well tested, used in many other states, red states, blue states, all over the country. And it takes 5th grade classrooms through the process of of voting for who's going to be the kid governor of Vermont. And our goal is to make sure that we have at least one school from every county. And there happens to be a county that has fewer fifth grade classrooms than other counties. So Andy, I might need your help in figuring out who are the Grand Isle County fifth grade teachers that we need to talk to see if we can score a school participating. Absolutely. From Grand Isle.
We need representation, so I'm on top of it.
Nice.
Excellent. All right, you make sure you forward that. We'll look for that sign up. I think when I looked this morning, we have 11 out of 14 counties represented, and of course, multiple schools from every county would be great.
It's so cool.
I think there are little fifth graders that line up to be campaign managers for the other kids. The next generation of Joannas.
I love it. Oh my God. When my kiddo was, I think it was like the last year of elementary school maybe, but it might have been middle school. They were like contemplating running for some kind of student council. And I was like, oh my God, let's make flyers and palm cards. And he was like, stop.
You'd be so embarrassing.
No, Mom.
I think I scared her out of politics for years. She's just coming back now. Yeah, noted. So that is all very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing with us what's going on in the office. We would love to hear a little about the elections bill. There's a lot happening. Mm-hmm. It's a really important bill. There's a lot in it. And we'd love to know what's in it and also what's happening with it, what the status is.
Yes. So the elections bill is H-474. So that means it started in the House back in January. They worked on it for a month and a half or so, passed it over to the Senate. The Senate has been working on it and got it to a place where we thought it was going to pop out and come to the floor and we would get it to final passage. So whereas ordinarily we would be cheering and hoping for a timely adjournment of the legislature, we're actually really excited that they're going into overtime because our bill didn't make progress in the regular session. And so right now we have it teed up so that we expect that it will be on the Senate floor on Monday. We have been, it's a pared down bill from what it was before, which is, sort of unfortunate because, everything in the bill was about, reducing administrative burdens, making sure that we're improving the service that we are offering to the clerks and the candidates who are participating in the elections. It's about promoting transparency and accountability and really just about sort of good housekeeping and aligning the statutes across elections. There was a lot of stuff in there that would have changed some dates for local elections to ease the burden on local clerks. There's one provision that the clerks across the state have been asking for that I've been advocating for since I came into office, and that is a process where write-in candidates who are legitimately trying to win that seat in a write-in method will register with the town or city clerk so that on election night, they don't need to enumerate every single time and an individual wrote in his or her own name because they didn't know the candidates.
My town clerk wife will greatly appreciate that. I know on election night when she pulls in at 7:30, 7:45 or 8 o'clock, then there were no write-ins. Because she's got the, it's fairly smooth if the machine works and everything goes by. But it's the write-ins that slow them down.
And I always say to people, because I've worked on like a million campaigns, sometimes I have to nudge people and remind them, I'm like, writing in Daffy Duck actually creates work for people and delays the returns, and I'm the one sitting in there waiting for them. And could you maybe not do that?
Yeah. It might seem like a funny thing to do when you're standing in the voting booth, but it has real consequences. And so now Daffy Duck will be lumped in with the 57 write-ins.
Excellent.
And Andy's wife will not be staying up late into the night. So there's also some changes in the bill to the campaign finance system. We are proposing a change that would require all candidates to at least register in the system. If they haven't raised or spent $500, they don't have to do the regular filings, but they will register with the system, And then the system will send out courtesy reminders when there's a deadline.
This is huge. This is so great.
Don't you think a courtesy reminder would be helpful? But the other side of it is that it will require candidates to affirmatively say, I have not raised or spent.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really important because we hear stories from all across the state, in statewide races, in Senate races, in House races, in county races. So-and-so has, umpteen lawn signs, and I saw an ad in the paper last week, and they haven't filed any campaign finance expenditures or contributions. And that is a violation.
I am so happy you're doing this. I just have to tell you, as Chittenden County Dems chair, I had 46 Democratic legislative candidates under my jurisdiction, and I was telling people, you have to file, you all have to file. And now that it's coming from you, that's so much better.
Yes, I think this really levels the playing field. And we've also modernized the campaign finance reporting system. So the IT system is much more intuitive and user-friendly. You all know, as well as I, that when you're out running a campaign, it's sometimes really hard to keep chasing down all of those little details. And unless you have a volunteer who wants to do that filing for you, you're probably doing it like I did sometimes at 11 o'clock at night, the night that it's due. So
for sure. Yeah. And I would get so many panicked calls from candidates, it's so great.
I can't make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thank you for that.
There's a little change in the definition of who must file in campaign finance in terms of a political committee. It used to be that a committee was 2 or more people, and that would mean that if one person wanted to invest a lot of money in helping to support one candidate or trying to defeat another candidate, they wouldn't have had to disclose as an individual the campaign activities. This would simply say that if you are an individual who raises or spends more than $500 to influence a campaign or a question, you have to register with our system and disclose what you're spending your money on. There's one little section of the bill that was very important to the House, and that is a requirement that any place in the state where there is a House district that splits a town, like along a street, and part of the town is in one legislative district and part is in another, all of those places, I think there's 23 places in Vermont where that happens, have to go out and actually audit that. Because what was discovered right after the November election was there was one street, one boundary line between Bennington 1 and Bennington 5, where a handful of houses were accidentally put in the wrong district. And so they got the wrong ballot. We don't expect that we're going to find another instance like this, but we want to head that off.
Yeah, smart. We just recorded an episode that hasn't aired yet about what does it mean to be a real Vermonter. And we're curious. Yeah, it's super loaded, right? And so, and it was so interesting to have the conversation because I came in with one idea and set of experiences, and Andy came in with a different idea and set of experiences, and we asked a bunch of our friends, and it was pretty cool. And I'm really curious, what was it that made you feel like you belong here? What does that term mean to you?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen a copy of our Civic Health Index. I'm looking to see if I have a copy floating around here. We actually broke this down when we printed the Civic Health Index because it's a really common question, and it's an important question when you think about people's interest in or ability to get involved in their community and participate in civic life, right? If you don't feel like that you belong, if you are told by the founding mothers or fathers that you're not a real Vermonter, that makes it harder to feel like, hey, my voice is valued and I should get involved in leading in my community or serving on the planning commission or running for the school board. And so our definition as an office, and I think it tracks to how I feel, is you're a Vermonter if you live here. And, I can't tell you how many times over the years, some old timer has said to me, well, you're not a real Vermonter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Us too.
Oh, wow. Want to fight me for it?
Right.
I think we all need to recognize that, a country that's founded on immigration and founded on people coming here for a better life needs to not make those people feel excluded to the second generation.
Yeah.
We need to be more open and welcoming. And, there are a lot of people who come to Vermont, not because they want to make Vermont into New Jersey, like some people say, but because Vermont is a beautiful place and we have a clean environment and we have safe streets and we have good schools. And we have communities who care about each other and neighbors who will lend you a cup of sugar or help you dig your car out of the snowbank. And so to me, Vermonters are people who want to do all of those things in this beautiful place.
It's often used discouraging people from participating in local government, which is the last thing we need, because what makes Vermont so special is we do rely on a lot of volunteers and community members to make our governments go, especially at the local level. And we have a major transition coming up. I mean, a lot of people in those positions are older, and we need people to step up and keep that going if we want to maintain this community connection that we have in Vermont.
Yeah, some of our smaller towns will be shooting themselves in the foot, figuratively, if they are not encouraging the next generation of people who are engaged and active. And, handing over the reins can be hard because maybe the next person's going to do it a little different than you did. But if you don't like what they're doing, you can vote them out.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could share with us a little of your thoughts about what's going on with voting rights and the Trump administration and the SAVE Act.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. We should have started with that.
Sorry.
For people who aren't elections nerds, like maybe some of us are elections nerds, the SAVE Act and the president's executive order from March 25th proposed to do the same thing, which is to require everyone when they register to vote to demonstrate proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. And, on the surface, that seems very logical and reasonable because we only want American citizens to be voting in American elections. However, the logistics of how you accomplish that are really pretty complicated. We have no federal agency whatsoever that will provide to you proof of documentation. The Social Security Administration said, just because you have a Social Security number does not mean that you are a citizen, because we have some people who are legal permanent residents who, for whatever reason, have gotten a Social Security number. We are not the document you need, is what the Social Security Administration said. So we go to the driver's license folks, and the driver's license administrator said, look, the purpose of what we do is to say, yes, this person knows how to safely operate a motor vehicle. We are not the citizen test, and in order to make us be that, you would have to invest a lot in those systems. And so you get to digging a little bit more, and what the question that I wanted to ask is, if this challenge is so big to find an agency who can help us to prove our citizenship so that we can continue to exercise our fundamental right to vote, how big is the problem that we're contemplating, right? So I did some research, and the Brennan Center for Justice did a review of 20 million voters 20 million votes cast in a previous election, and found that the instance of non-citizens who were on the voting records and actually cast a ballot was 0.0001%. So you multiply that, not huge. So you multiply that by the number of votes that are typically cast in Vermont, and it would take us 3 full election cycles for one ballot to be cast, possibly by a non-citizen. And so the SAVE Act and the executive order really are unnecessary, and I think will amount to people being disenfranchised because they didn't have the time to gather together all of the documents that they needed. in order to prove citizenship to be on the voter registration rolls.
Thanks for that.
So for our final question, we've been asking all our guests what their Creemee order is.
Oh, well, it depends on the kind of Creemee place, okay? Because if it's just sort of your standard, back of the gas station Creemee place that doesn't really have a specialty, we'll say, then I'm going to do the chocolate vanilla twist, because nice. I like to have a little bit of both.
Good choice.
But in Vermont, there are lots of specialty flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I understand that there's a place up near Lake Willoughby that has a Maine blueberry and a Vermont maple. And you can get them in a twist.
Them? Oh, wow.
That's fierce. That is fierce.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to have to take this show on the road, I think.
Yeah.
That is going to be a mandatory field trip. And
that's nice.
Are you pro sprinkles?
I'm not a sprinkles person.
There we go.
Neither is Andy.
Finally got one in my column.
They feel kind of, I don't know, chalky or waxy or something. No.
I just think I've aged out of sprinkles is what I...
Well, they were fun. They look fun.
Right.
But they just don't feel fun.
Yep.
Fair. That's fair. This was awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. And we just really appreciate your time and your service to Vermont and everything you're doing. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great to be able to geek out on all things elections and
Right?
Secretary of State. So I appreciate you asking me to join you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you all for listening.
Follow us between episodes for the latest updates on our socials at There's No A in Creemee on Instagram, Substack, and Blue Sky.
And catch us on our next episode of There's No A in Creemee, Vermont Politics, Culture, and Beyond in Apple Podcasts and Spotify.